رسول الله نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له نشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ورحمته للعالمين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Again, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is a continuation of a session you gave before, Dr. Ali and myself, on all the things that are unseen, like about jinn, hasad, ain, what's called evil eye, about sihr, jadoo, we call it, right? Now, and all of these things that actually are happening for us. Now, because there are so many questions, and we know people when they have to ask questions, then we give them enough time. That's why we thought we have this session. It's a 2-hour session, all of it for your questions. Yeah, and we'll take the questions. Even what we want to say might come in the question. But let me introduce 3 things for you, 1, 2, and 3 quickly. 1, all of these things are directly confirmed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The jinn is in the Quran. As a matter of fact, the jinn are our companions. All the time Allah mentions jinn and ins. Sihr is mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, how it began, where it came from. The evil eye is mentioned in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hasad, there are 2 chapters on hasad and so on. And all of these things are there. Yani, as Muslims, we believe in them. Yani, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us. That's number 1. Number 2, that these things you cannot see them, but you can see the effect of them. Yani, there are certain signs, sometimes people show them. Alhamdulillah, we saw certain things that we can say, this is definitely sihr, this is definitely, and you can find it out, but after you experience with it. Now, the third is what to do about it, and how we can protect ourselves, basically, from all of these things that happen to us, inshallah. Now, this is a third thing, but again, there are other things that are confused with this. Sometimes people have problems, they get stuck with them, they think this is ayn, this is sihr. It might not be so. Yeah, it could be just a simple problem that people can sit down, get some counseling, try to resolve it, and then it is done. There are some people who go through phases, psychological depression, there are so many things that are here. We don't confuse this. And this is why we do even work with doctors. And have been going to hospitals. I don't know if Dr. Saeed is here or not. We have a psychiatrist and a psychologist with us here. And there is a long, if you go to Credit Valley, there are 14 doctors there. There are all these therapists and so on and so on. Sometimes they themselves say, this has nothing to do with any physical, any chemical imbalance. And they attribute to things that are not quote-unquote known. I was in Malaysia, I think in Melbourne. There is this Australian doctor, actually, he has a clinic. It's very amazing. He brought a brother, actually a sheikh from Turkey, and he has it in the clinic. He deals with people, he has this long staff with people, and he says, listen, this is not in our field. He sends them to him right there. And then the sheikh does the ruqya and so on and so on. Right? So these are the things, inshallah, we are going to do with this. Inshallah, I'm going to see if the Sheikh Dr. Ali wants to say something before we go. And then the rest is your questions. You have 2 ways of asking questions. You can just stand up and ask the question, or if you feel you don't want to be known for the person asking the question, send it to us in writing, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. So the rest of the time is yours, not ours. Tafadhal.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I'll just briefly add to what the Sheikh said, is that when it comes to protection from these things, and in fact anything that comes your way that disturbs you, anything, I'm talking about anything, any hardship, relief, lies into basically coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that Allah is the best protector. And the cure comes primarily from Allah Azza wa Jal. So it's a physical illness, or it's a spiritual illness, or it's in a mental, disturbance. All of that, the cure for it, the underlying cure, is to go back to Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the advice that everyone should keep in mind. If you're having a problem, go back to Allah Azza wa Jal and straighten up your life. Stay away from the haram. Recommit yourself to what Allah Azza wa Jal loves, because this will give you power. Power, emotional, psychological, but also physical power. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be with you. And Allah will assist you, and Allah will guide you, and will make things easy for you. And will remove hardship from your way. Because Allah Azza wa Jal says, and we know this ayah, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. And Allah also says, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. So if you have taqwa of Allah, He will give you relief and exit from your problems. And in the other ayah it says also, if you have taqwa, will give you ease in your life. So if there is difficulty, whatever type of difficulty it is, going back to Allah and having taqwa will give you that ease. We add to it, and this is something that Shaykh and I have said last time, we add to it inshallah that part of this taqwa, keep up your salah. Take care of your salah. This will be the greatest assistance that you will have against these things that we're talking about. You know, what do we say about when the adhan is being called? What happens to the shaitan? Who remembers? They ran away. They run away. So when you call the adhan, the shaitan runs away. When you are in salah, of course, they will come to whisper, but if you are strong and dedicated in your salah, you will leave your salah with Allah aiding you against the shaitan. Remember your adhkar, the morning adhkar, the evening adhkar, before you go to bed, before you enter the bathroom, when you take your clothes off. All of these things are important to give you protection. And the more that you are connected to Allah, the less that the shaitan will have power over you. And these things, inshallah, will just wash away. So just keep in mind that you need to do this. And sometimes the problem is easy and will go away in a few days, and sometimes it is not and will take repeated attempts from you until it goes away. So patience, just like any other illness, patience until it goes away, inshallah. And so this is what I had, and we'll go inshallah to your questions.
So who's going to start? Do we have, sorry, just 1 minute. You don't have a mobile, you have a mobile microphone, right? I don't know where it is.
I don't have
طيب. Ilyas is not here. طيب. If you can speak loud, and sometimes we might have to repeat the question.
Inshallah.
تفضل.
My question is regarding the capabilities of the jinn. They are supposed to be able to see us while we are not able to see them. They whisper, like you said, whatever the ideas they want to feed us. Do they have the capability of reading our mind as well, so that they choose the right moment to suggest, or they are incapable of that and they just look at our action, whether we are in salah, then they can try and distract us from there, or is it something that they are capable of, that they can read our mind, that we are already going on the wrong direction so that they support us there, or we are trying to go to the right direction and they sort of want to get us off that track?
No, this is you, Sheikh.
Oh no.
No, this is the jinn is your
Fine. Let me repeat the question. Actually, when I'm answering, I'll be saying the question. He's saying basically that we know the jinn has certain capabilities that are beyond the humans. Actually, they're definitely beyond the humans. But the question is, can they read our mind? That's the summary of it. And isn't just that they see of what we do. Now, normally when we speak about things, we say things that are confirmed. We know these are told by the Prophet ﷺ or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. Definitely Allah says first the creation of the jinn themselves. Allah said they are first, in the Quran, they're created from flame, they're fire. They're not the same substance we are created from. طيب? And this is why some people even say, would they then be burnt in hellfire? Yani, why if they are fire, they can burn? But Allah knows. He said, yes, they are going to be there. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we will fill hellfire from jinn and ins. So how? Allah knows best. Now, in their creation, they are first transparent. We don't see them. That's the problem with them. Number one, they are transparent. Number two, in every other aspect, they are like us. As we said before, Allah told us, and the Prophet described this. They have children, they marry, they have this, and they can even connect with men, human beings. And they are jinn who is married to human beings and vice versa. They say the same. So that's the capability. They are transparent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said what you said, إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَكُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. And I said that the Prophet in one of the hadiths said on the day of judgment will be the opposite. That we will be able to see the jinn and the jinn will not be able to see us. That's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, in terms of also capabilities, we told you, Allah recorded the incident of this queen of Sheba and the palace that a jinn said to the Prophet, Prophet Sulaiman, that he can move it from Yemen to Palestine just in a meeting. He said, before you leave this meeting, I'll bring it to you. That's actually the throne, not the whole palace. Now, and like Allah said, قال عفريت من الجن. And actually the word عفريت has a question mark. What this عفريت is? Some of the scholars say this is just an amateur. عفريت means somebody who's not like professional. Then Allah said, قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. The one who really knows what he's doing. He said to him, I'll bring it to you before you twinkle your eyes. That speed nobody think about. And before you do this, and actually when he saw it in front of him, just like that, he said, فَلَمَّا رَأَوْهُ مُسْتَقِرًّا عِنْدَهُ. This is what the Quran says. قَالَ رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ. Because the power Allah gave even to Sulaiman to verify it. Some people, this Sulaiman himself who did this. Allah alam. But they do have that capabilities. Now, whether they have the capability to read our minds, we don't have any information about that. I don't know anything of the Quran or anything of the Hadith. However, when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the Qareen, that there is a Qareen with us, and this Qareen is with all of us, he reads our minds, he knows what we do. And the Prophet said the jinn have communicated. I told you last time that some of the people who practice magic, right, they're magicians. Now, I told you this, and this happens. When you walk into the person will say, Salam, oh, Dr. Ali, you are so, you said, he will tell you, he will shock you, because he will tell you things that nobody will know except you. But he said the Qareen will communicate to him so that when you come, that person gets that information and gives a false impression that he knows everything about you. This is why, by the way, they sometimes blackmail people. And he will tell you all your weaknesses, all your strengths, so you feel like a prisoner to him. That much we know. Reading the mind, Allah alam, I didn't come across anything. I don't know what you have. Now, okay?
I want to add to that. In the question that if someone is possessed by a jinn, then the jinn will control him by his mind. Because it is action for you to know that he is possessed or he has something that's interfering with his regular thing. And we have the great saying from the Prophet himself, peace be upon him. When they did that with the comb and the hair, he was confused. So there was some kind of indication that the jinn can manipulate the subconscious mind, that they have the power over your mind. Follow now?
Now.
So if you say that this man is possessed, he's doing something. So how did we call that mental? He has mental problem. In the medical term today, he has a mental problem. We have a mental problem here. But this could be that something else, a strange phenomenon is going on within his body, causing him to behave that way. And then is where we come to the conclusion that the jinn has the power not only to manipulate your mental capacity, but they get into your body. That if we talk about shaitan entering your heart, don't give shaitan the key to enter your heart. Once you give him the key to enter, you will have a hard time to get him out. See? He will not come in until you give him the key. Shaitan does not enter until you open the door. It's the similar reasoning with the jinn. How does the jinn come to you? You have to have weaknesses in your iman. Because the principle of it, if you believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, the system of this belief is to protect you from everything else that God created in this belief. Correct? Answer that.
Partially, yes, but his question is that do they ahead of time read their own minds? It is one thing that they control your mind, they manipulate you and so on, but knowing ahead of time is a question mark. That's number one. Number two, even if you ever believe it, you said it yourself that they came to the Prophet ﷺ. The shaitan came to Prophet Dawood. مَثَّنِ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ. He said the shaitan came to me and he struck. So the jinn and the shaitan can actually try everyone. It depends on who will protect himself from them. Because sometimes you even forget something or you don't do something and then they get you. It does not necessarily that you don't have the iman. But even in like sometimes, and this is why, exactly, this is why now people of piety normally what they say that whenever something happened to them, I said to you this, I was struggling with this myself. You don't know whether Allah is punishing you or Allah is testing you. Because there are two things. Remember I told you. Yani when you, for instance, you think, what did I do? And then you get all these tons of things happening to you. Mashallah, today one of the young boys made the khatira on patience and he spoke about Ayyub alayhi salam beautifully. And then what he said, this is part of it. Look at what happened to Ayyub. Ayyub basically was rich, was affluent, had so many children, he had this, he had that. And then Allah tested him, stripped him of everything. He became not only poor, everybody left him. Actually, the dispute that sometimes we have among ourselves is that whether his wife also left him or not. And at what point he left him. This is why Allah recorded this prayer. وَأَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Then Allah said what? فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ وَكَشَفْنَا مَا بِهِ مِنْ ضُرٍّ وَآتَيْنَاهُ أَهْلَهُ وَمِثْلَهُم مَّعَهُم رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا وَذِكْرَى لِلْعَابِدِينَ. Like this is one of the most pious people. Now, and this is why this might be also important for you, because when we get tested, the first thing that comes to our mind is that what did we do? Is Allah angry with us? Not necessarily, because Allah tested Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, tested Ayyub, tested all these prophets. And this is why at one time I said to you, if you want to know whether Allah is testing you or whether Allah is punishing you, look at what the Prophet said and see where you are. What did the Prophet say? The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى فَرَضَ فَرَائِض فَلَا تُضَيِّعُوهُ. He said Allah said certain fard, don't. If you are doing your fard, your 5 daily prayers, your fasting, your zakah, everything. So that's A. He said, وَحَدَّ حُدُودٍ تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. Allah said, these are the boundaries of Allah. Don't cross them. Boundaries like, for instance, a woman has to stay in iddah. She said, okay, I'm not going to stay because Allah said she has to stay. That's had. A brother has to take care of his wife during this time. This hududullah. He said, if you are maintaining those boundaries and not crossing them, that's number 2. The third, he said, وَحَرَّمَ أَشْيَاء. Allah made certain things very haram. We're talking about haram. You don't drink alcohol, you don't drink haram 100%. Either a statement from Allah or from the Prophet. If you are doing this, then definitely this is a test. But if you are not doing this, then it could be a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows best. Jazakallah khair.
In your explanation, then someone can be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we can interpret it that he is being possessed by a jinn, or someone has caused some interference from the unknown world of the jinn that we cannot see.
Could be, sure.
Could be, but then how do we know the difference between a test from Allah and the jinn interference?
This is what I said to you. The jinn interference is when the jinn redirects you to do the wrong things. Because Allah said this, by the way, even with the shaitan. When Allah, for instance, says, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. The shaitan will come all the time to whisper you in your mind that you are poor, you cannot do this and so on. Khalas? He said, then he will do it. He controls you. He said, يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم. He used the word يأمركم. He commands you, controls you to do fahsha or wrongs. That's how we find. Look at then what Allah does. Right in the same verse, Allah said, وَاللَّهُ يَعِدُكُمْ 2 things. Same. مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْهُ وَفَضْلٍ وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ يُؤْتِي الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Let me go over this. He said, on the contrary to the shaitan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise is that when you do good, Allah will forgive your sin, will wipe your sins, especially in charity. And on top of this, Allah will give you more. And Allah will give you wisdom, because that's the person who is wise to do it. So the shaitan will strip you of this so that you act irrationally. That's what happened to these people. طيب نعم إن شاء الله. نعم, go ahead.
My grandfather was Imam al-Masjid, and in his mosque there used to be hundreds of jinns who used to come for prayers. And when he died, there were 300 jinns who came for reciting Quran Sharif. And my question is that lifespan for the human beings is specified, like 70, 80, 90, 80 years. What is the lifespan for the jinns?
Go ahead, sir.
No, this is still your topic. It's still your
Fine. Again, we don't have something conclusive. See what? I'm very careful. If we don't have a statement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't have a statement from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, we don't have a consensus among, or at least an opinion of the fuqaha or the ulama. Because Allah gave us in these 3 steps. He said, you obey Allah. If not, you go to the Prophet. If not, go to the ulama, people in charge. And we don't have anything that says, but there are traces of hadith of Rasulullah that the jinn's lifespan is much more longer than ours. By how much? The Prophet said, "A'maru ummati," this average. He said the average age of my ummah is between 60 to 70. That's average. Sahih, some people pass. Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu was 84. The Prophet himself, look at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn Khattab, Ali, all of them died in their 60s. Right? 63, 64, 65. But some people pass. Anas ibn Malik is the longest. He lived 101 or 2 years. Now, generally speaking, our age is limited within that frame. Now, beyond that, we have very few people. The jinn, Allah didn't tell us much about their lifespan. But there is the Prophet said that they live longer than us. He said that they live longer. Yeah, they live long. By how much? We don't have any information to say. And by the way, what you said about the jinn and how many jinns in the masjid, the jinn can't come in the masjid. He came to masjid of Rasulullah. We said this mentioned before. نعم. They are good jinns, طبعا, definitely. This is Surah Al-Jinn. قالوا إنا منا الصالحون ومنا دون ذلك. And then minna, like among us, there are even some people who are pious among the jinn. And Allah said that. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, Ya ma'ashar al-jinn, He always addresses the two, and they're good and they're bad. They're bad jinn and good jinn. But the question that we have to ask also, can we deal with the good jinn? The Prophet said no. Don't ever deal with the jinn, period. Yeah, they can. They can. Last time we mentioned, shape of humans, they come in donkeys, they come in snakes. It happened during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That...
No. I mean, it's all about jinn. So, I mean, the jinn was your side, your topic.
Right. We are told that they can come into different forms, right? Yani, they can come in this and this and this and this. As well, we all know that the jinn, actually, they can not only take a shape, they can come into children. They can go into every person. That's no question about it. Yani. طيب, what the verse says, listen carefully how we read it. Allah said this, قال عفريت من الجن. First Sulaiman asked, who's going to bring me the throne? Then Allah said, قال عفريت من الجن. This is clear. A Ifrit from the jinn said, أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك. He said, before you leave this majlis, like they're sitting in a meeting, I said, I'll bring them. But when Allah mentioned the other, He said, قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. Whether this is a jinn who is in a higher level, who said that, Allah didn't tell us. No. He said, just this is why some of the scholars say, this could be Sulaiman himself. That he had that even power over the jinn. The reason they say this, because at the end, what he said, فَلَمَّا رَآهُ مُسْتَقِرًّا عِنْدَهُ. When he saw it, قال, who said that? Not the jinn, Sulaiman. قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. Sometimes the Quran gives you something that bears interpretations. Because he said, oh my Lord, oh Allah, instill in me that I'll be very thankful to you for the great powers you gave me. Is it the power to control the jinn? Or is it the power that he himself is able to do it is silent? Yani some scholars say no, this is the jinn, because he was talking to the jinn, I asked them who's going to do it, and the others say no, but قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. Who has the ilm from the kitab? Is it the jinn or Sulaiman? Well, Allah أعلم.
Yeah.
نعم طيب تفضل.
He had his hand up for a long time.
Oh.
Yeah.
طيب. Sorry?
Okay.
Oh no, it's a Q&A. We said we gave the lecture before. Actually, I have the lecture here. I brought it with me. I have all my notes here. If you need something, I can go to read it. And actually, something that happened today. I was just telling you. I came running to look for my notes, and I couldn't find the notes. I didn't know where my notes are. I said, okay, I'll trade them. Then, subhanAllah, this is a very interesting book, by the way. Small booklet. It's called the Sihr, al-Mas, like this is Shaitan, Al-Ayn, Possession, Al-Mu'alijun bil-Quran. This was a research done This was interviews done in the Gulf state by Mujallat al-Muslim for about 1,500 people who claim to be, they went to this, they talked to the scholars, to the ulama. It's an excellent, actually, piece of research. So I picked this book, I said at least I will talk, and then I found my notes in there. So, I hope the jinn didn't do that. Okay, go ahead.
What's the boundary between how do we know if somebody's been affected by either most or something else and mental illness? That's the question I was
This
Yeah.
is your your stuff. No, I'll answer this question.
Type, go ahead.
And then you can answer this
Go ahead,
question.
inshallah.
So this is an easy one, although it still belongs to the Shaykh, but I'll answer it anyway. So the question is the difference between jinn and the shaitan, and is al-waswas al-khannas a jinn or a shaitan? So this inshallah shouldn't be confusing to anyone. The general category, the species, is the jinn. And from them, among the jinn, if there's a disobedient jinn that rejects Allah Azza wa Jal, that is the shaitan. Okay? So every shaitan is jinn. But not every jinn is a shaitan. Okay? So every shaitan belongs to the jinn. But not every jinn is a shaitan, because as the Shaykh have said, some of the jinn are pious and they will be in Jannah and they are Muslims and they worship Allah Azza wa Jal. Those are not called shayateen. The shaitan is a jinn who disobeys Allah and disbelieves in Him, and that is al-waswas al-khannas. So what does al-waswas al-khannas mean? The whisperer who withdraws. So when you forget about Allah Azza wa Jal, what does the shaitan do? Comes and whispers. And it says, in a tradition, he comes and sits on your heart. Means controls it, directs it, inspires you to do bad things. فَإِذَا ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَنَسْ. But if you remember Allah, what does he do? Withdraws and runs away. So this is the battle between our hearts and the shaitan. He's waswas when you forget, and he's khannas when you remember Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the jinn and shayateen and al-waswas al-khannas.
Fine.
His question.
Fine. The question that was asked about where do we draw the line between jinn, mas, and all these things, and between matters that have to do with psychology. By the way, these are two specialists who answered this question. If they have time, I will read it to you, but to give you a summary. He said, يقول الأخصائيون النفسيون, like people of psychology and psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, name them. أخذنا اثنين منهم. And they mentioned them, they mentioned their qualification. He said, when we take this, the first thing we do, even by the way, because these are Muslim doctors, by the way, and they are people of piety and so on, and they are people who are combining both Western, what they call academia, with this one. They said the first thing we do, we actually do all the tests and examinations that we have to do for the mental, because there might be a mental, what they call imbalances and chemical imbalances. There could be psychological problems. There can be this and that and that and that. And then when they clear this up, then they say we cannot do this, and they refer it to the other people. But normally go for that. There are some people also, by the way, what we call, I personally call them the honest raqis. When you go to them, the first question they'll ask you, did you consult with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or psychoanalyst, whatever it is, so that they know if there is anything that's beyond that. Because sometimes, this is why people take medicine, they take certain things and so on. And the opposite is true. I told you, I've been called many times to the hospital by doctors telling me that we did everything, we don't think this has nothing, like this person is going, and you see a patient in front of you, but they will say to you, this has nothing to do with chemical imbalance, that's nothing to do with something, there must be something beyond what we can. So, and this is why they ask us, even in the hospital, in the hospital itself, because that's what you have to find out for them. Yeah. That I don't know. We don't know which symptom, because psychologists have their own way of what they call checking, diagnosis and so on. So they have their techniques. Let me say this because it's also important. Some Muslims all the time say, oh, we don't believe in this, we don't believe in psychology. We have to make a distinction between two things. Between the philosophy of the knowledge, this is what PhD is about, and between the empirical research that people did. The philosophy is materialistic, like they deal with Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and I read all of these books, by the way. I'm very interested in reading these books, and it's amazing what you read, what they say. These people are intelligent, they're smart, and most of the Western academia is based on this. That is the philosophy, because they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in that, so on. We have to. But there are researches, empirical things they did, like things that practically they do. That is what we have to benefit from. يعني even people who say to you, oh, don't go and study psychology because it will confuse you, it's all kufr. That's wrong. يعني it's one thing to know the philosophy of the subject and to know the empirical research that we have, and we have to benefit from that. And that's what Muslims, even scholars and doctors, are doing that at the same time. Okay?
You had a Facebook.
Yeah.
You had a Facebook question. You had
Oh.
2 Facebook
There's
questions.
one question someone asked, Jess Murphy. Assalamu alaikum. There was a situation that happened to someone in my family where someone died and they have a lot of belief, and unfortunately they're not knowledgeable about this topic, but either truly believe they saw their relatives do something. And how do you go about telling them it is not their relative?
So after death, they saw the relatives?
No.
Okay, inshallah. So the question is that there were people who had suffered a loss in family, and after the passing of that family member, they started seeing them, probably around the house or images of them, and they believed that these were their deceased relative. So the question is, how do you go about telling them that this is really not your relative? And we have to believe firmly that this is not the deceased relative. This is not the spirit of so-and-so coming to visit you or to comfort you or hang around the house, because the soul is occupied. The soul is somewhere else. The soul is either is being blessed by Allah Azza wa Jal in its grave or is being punished. So Allah Azza wa Jal is not going to let the soul depart. In fact, you know, the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith that when someone is being told that you're going to go to Jannah and that they're told about what lies ahead, and he says, let me go and tell my family. And he's being told, stay put.
You cannot.
Stay. You cannot move. Stay where you are. So no visit, no spirit, no ruh, no person after they die will be allowed to go and visit their family. So the question here is, if you actually happen to see something in your home or somebody else sees it after somebody had passed away, what are you really seeing? You're seeing the jinn. If someone takes the form, as the Shaykh have said, the jinn can take the form of the deceased, whether it is that qareen or someone else. So if you see them around and they have the form of your relative after they had passed away, that is jinn. And they're just hanging around for some reason, whether it is to scare you or this is their place or whatever it is. Allah knows best. So your job is to believe, based on Islamic information, Islamic revelation, that this is not your relative. Second of all, if you started to suffer because of that, you want to get them out of the house, and you get them by reading Quran, specifically Surah Al-Baqarah, by reciting the adhan, by remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, and eventually, inshallah, they will leave. So this is not your dead relatives. Inshallah. Yeah. Is it a follow-up to this? Okay, inshallah.
Can you speak a little louder?
He says louder if you can.
Actually, one of the diagnostic criteria for differentiating between grief and major depressive disorder is a lot of people, empirically, you must have figured this out from collecting data. You do see the dead relatives after they pass away. So it's actually one of the criteria. It's very common.
Okay.
Seeing the dead person after they pass
So
away.
is this a way of compensating?
Coping?
Maybe, I don't know the explanation behind it physiologically.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hallucination, but it's very common in grief and depression.
Okay.
What's the call for us to kind of post for that person on Facebook so they can look into that as well?
Well, they can talk to their PCP about it, but what I know, what I remember is it depends on the time period. If it's within 6 months or a year, it's normal.
Okay.
If they're depressed beyond that, then they need to look into the possibility of major depressive
Mhm.
disorder.
Okay.
So I'll just repeat some of what we said. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that it is typical for a person, if they are suffering from grief after loss of a loved one, that they would hallucinate and they would see that figure.
It's one of the mentioned.
One of them, right? So that could happen, and it could just simply be that person hallucinating, right?
That's what they teach us.
It could be. So it could be. That's a possibility that he's adding. One more question. Okay, go on.
Salam, my question is, if a Muslim with knowledge of ruqya is in a situation where a non-Muslim is being possessed by a jinn, is he allowed to read over the non-Muslim?
It's okay. غيرت غير المسلم.
طبعا هو أصلا the ruqya is a prayer. So if a person is not a Muslim, the prayer does not affect that person as much as it affects a Muslim. So generally speaking, the ruqya is read for a person who believes in Allah, a person who is a Muslim, and so on. However, by the way, some of the scholars say you can still read the ruqya on that person, because he said a person might be a Muslim and he doesn't know that he's a Muslim. And there's some people, as Allah says, for the children, for instance, He said any child is born on the fitrah. This is why by this some of the scholars say if a non-Muslim baby dies, you can bury him with Muslims, because in fitrah. And they say if there is a child who is possessed and he is not, but that child is born on fitrah, that's why you can do it. Wallah alam, that's all what we can. Can I just suggest, because we got a lot of questions in the cards and you have to be fair to people, what I'm going to suggest to you is that we alternate it. We take one question from the floor and one question at least from the thing, so I'll let you go for the second
From
question.
the
I know.
please? Okay,
No, we
inshallah.
talk on this. And the same thing for that. Yeah, you
Okay.
can-
Oh, inshallah. طيب. So the question here is how does a person know if they are possessed by jinn? How do they distinguish from other worldly problems, and how to cure, how to protect, how to solve this, how ourselves and our beloved ones? Now, of course, I mean, being possessed is very different than having problems, otherworldly problems. Worldly problems that are natural, that are physical, are different from being possessed. In the beginning, they might be confused. You might confuse them. You don't know exactly what they are. So if you have a physical problem, if there's a natural problem, seek natural and physical solutions for it. If you find that this is not working, and it's getting even worse, and add to it, especially about possession. If you find that you don't really like listening to the adhan, or that person does not like to read the Quran, or is reacting negatively to that reading, they stay for some people. They try to be alone in a dark place, spend a lot of time in the bathroom. They don't like to shower. They don't like to make wudu. These symptoms on some of them or all of them might be there. These might be signs that that person is suffering from something that is beyond what is natural, supernatural. Then you seek treatment. And you begin to read the Quran on them, or you take them to Araqi, let's call him a healer, and then he will read. And once you know that starts, and you see a reaction to it, convulsions, that the possession, the jinn takes over, and they start talking, then you know for sure that that person is possessed, and then you follow an Islamic pathway to relieve that person of their sickness. So how do you know the difference between this and that? Well, you just walk the path of treatment, and then the results will tell you whether the person is possessed, or if they are not, it's just a natural problem, then they need natural solutions for it.
This is actually
Connected?
continuation.
Or how does it know if he is impacted by hasad, ayn, or magic? And I think the Shaykh even answered this last time. How do you know if what is impacting you, is it hasad, ayn, or magic? In the beginning, you're not going to know. In the beginning, it's just going to be difficulty in your life. There is going to be pain in your body, but you're not going to know, is it this, or that? You're not going to know until when? Until you start treating yourself. And when the reaction that you're going to have to it will eventually tell you whether it is hasad or if it is magic. So if there is a discovery of jinn in a person's body, then this is what? This is likely to be either possession or magic. But if the symptom starts going away, and this is likely to be hasad. So, hasad is more common. You're more likely to be affected by hasad than magic.
And by ayn,
And by ayn than by magic. But magic does exist. But when do you know it's magic? There will be symptoms that will tell you that this is more severe than simple hasad and simple envy.
Just to add to this also, by the way, this is from experience now. When you see things that are beyond what we call reason, then that should be all the time is jinn, because the jinn has powers. I told you I had a child, don't want to scare you. It was one of the scary incidents.
We remember
I
that
have.
story.
Now, a child who was less than 2 years, I'm holding him in my hand like this, and this boy was twisting me to the point that I fell from the, as if he's holding me as a plier. And this is old boy. And then he laughs like, those scary movies. He goes, ha ha ha, and similar. And then he looks at me, spits on my face. Lots of flaws. And this is definitely is not a child. And then when we finished the ruqya, it took a long time, by the way. He sweat, like I told you, we had to bring a towel to dry him up. And then the boy became just like a small, soft piece of cotton. Definitely there was a jinn in the child. I didn't have a diet. So that, after you read the ruqya. This is why some of the ruqya, they have something, and you see this, if those of you I know people now are hitting the internet and so on. You say a lot of scholars have what they call a ruqya al-kamila. الرؤية الكاملة means there are verses they think can trigger the jinn, verses can trigger the ayn. Yeah, this is just, so what they do is they keep reading, and then they see what triggers they have, and certain symptoms that can tell you, yes, this is the jinn is, the most clear of all is the jinn, because the jinn shows, and there are powers that you cannot imagine them. But Allah Ta'ala, all of these things can be. But then also the jinn, don't forget, من شر الوسواس الخناس. The jinn has the capacity to duck. Yeah, and this is why sometimes you do the ruqya once, twice, thrice, nothing shows. And then all of a sudden, bang, you get the thing for there, inshallah. Now.
Doctor, can the human eye human being can see the jinn?
Want to go for that?
No, you can go.
Right. The Prophet ﷺ said, yes, the human beings can see the jinn, but it's not advisable for them to see the jinn. And we said there are two incidents that happened during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ saw a jinn, one actually both in his masjid, in his original form, and he actually diverted the Sahaba from seeing him. Right? And he said, if it was not the promise, you know, the incident, a promise of Prophet Sulaiman gave the jinn a promise that prophets will see them but will not reveal them. So he said, if it was not that promise, I would have tied him to the pillar of the masjid and bred the children to it. Now the second incident, which is really amazing, they said one time the Prophet was sitting with the companions, all of a sudden the Prophet started talking a different language. Actually some of the called it like Haim, Qaim, something like that. And then all of the Sahaba started staring at him. Imagine the Prophet sitting in front of the people, all of a sudden he breaks, he says loud, and they start laughing. Rarely the Prophet laughs. The Prophet used to smile a lot, but really he used to laugh. And then he broke in laughter, and people were really puzzled. Then after some time, he just quieted, and the Sahaba were puzzled. They said, Ya Rasul, what happened? He said, while I'm talking to you, the jinn came. Forgetting himself, he came in his original form. And I don't want you to see him. This is why I did these things. I know you look at me, and you not until he disappeared. As a matter of fact, he said, I addressed him in his language, told him, what are you doing here? So for humans, it's not. But they said seeing the jinn can leave a scar, just like seeing something bad in your life. Yeah.
Can human being and jinn can marry each other?
Yeah, they do.
Then how can't see them?
You don't see them. You can marry them, but you don't see them. By the way, this is for sisters. No, just a minute. Women are advised, even if they by themselves in their own bedrooms, locked in it, that they should not uncover themselves. Yeah, it's advisable for a woman all the time to be covered, because the jinn can be there. You don't see the jinn.
What about male then?
The same.
My question is,
But it's more, sorry, it's more so with the women. Anam.
I'm stuck on my question again. You see, lifespan for Farishtas is no. They are all there. They are going to live till the doomsday. No lifespan for the shaitan. He is there. He's going to stay till doomsday. How come you don't know the lifespan for jinns? I don't see any graveyards. I don't see
That's a good question. But are they buried? When they die, by the way, they don't go into oblivion. You never know. Allah told us certain knowledge. He didn't tell us everything, right? What we don't know is more than what we know. And this is why we go by what Allah told us, and the Prophet should not be on the safe side. Some scholars use the word possible reasons, or possible. We say possible, it could be. But we cannot be conclusive, because we don't have any evidence to rely on it. And this is the deen, basically. If you don't have something to lean on, you better off say, La a'lam, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, طيب.
Ask if the sisters.
Sisters, anyone has a question? Actually, most of these questions seem to come from the sisters. Am I right? All of them. This is why they come to. Fine. Let's take one question from here.
What's the practical approach to these topics as just an average Muslim? What should be your goal in understanding them, and what should be your approach to the Sahel, Jinn?
Excellent. Actually, this is what Sheikh Ali started answering. I think you should elaborate.
Are these topics to be obsessed with, to research, to learn about, or is there like a practical limit that you need to understand and then protect yourself from and go on with your life? So what is the approach?
Jazakallah khair. It's a beautiful question. Now, we'll
Okay,
take it.
inshallah. You can add to it.
Naam, inshallah.
Now, so the question is, what is the practical limits of our knowledge of this topic? Do we obsess about it? Do we be engrossed in studying it and studying it and studying it, or do we know, as far as you said, an average Muslim, do we know enough about it to protect ourselves from it, and then we'll move on with our lives? And it's the latter. That is, first of all, you need to believe that it's true. Part of our aqidah is that you believe that it is true. How are you going to protect yourself from something if you don't believe in it to begin with? So belief in it is first. Second of all, to protect yourself from it. Because, the consequence of, if I know about an evil, why do I want to know about an evil? Just to know, or I need to protect myself? So protect yourself from it. How do you protect yourself from it? By what we said. And generally is, you stay away from the haram. You stay away from what upsets Allah Azza wa Jal. You stay away from suspicious areas, suspicious people, who may actually either get you into magic or, subhanAllah, send a spell on you or envy you. You stay away from all of this and you obey Allah Azza wa Jal, and you be protected by the adhkar, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you're fine, that is the limit of what you need to know, and live the rest of your life. Now, if, subhanAllah, unfortunately, you become afflicted by one of these things, then you need to know more about it so that you can save yourself. Or a family member or a friend, they're afflicted by something like that, you need to know enough about it so that you'll be able to help them. Beyond that, there are more important things that you should focus on.
Fine. The brother actually alerted me that we should keep answering. I'm putting this in order, by the way, so when they come, I just read them and put them in the order to be fair to you. Now, this one is simple one. It says, this question is for Sheikh Abdullah, this from me. It says, without the will of Allah, nothing can happen. Absolutely, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Actually, nothing will happen to you without the will of Allah, which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows whether we are open for something or not. How can jinn and shaitan then influence us? In the same verse where Allah spoke about the magic, what does He say? خلاص واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان. First He freed Sulaiman from the blame. He said وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر. They teach people and they وما أنزل على الملكين. This is the story that we talked about last time. ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا. They themselves will say فلا تكفر إنما نحن فتنة. يعني teaching something. By the way, also Allah taught us the bad and the good because we can't يعني say for instance, if we live in darkness, we will not imagine what light could look like. If you don't have virtue, you will not know what sin is. If you don't have wrong, you will not right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ulama say, إنما تعرف الأمور إيش بأضدادها. يعني you see the opposites of things so that you understand what things are. So Allah created them, we don't know for what reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has one. But He says, this is the point that I want to drive on. He said, وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةٌ فَلَا تَكْفُرْ فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ. The first thing that their target is husband and wife, breaking relations. By the way, when you mentioned about this jinn and so on, 90% of what comes to me here for the last 20 years here is jinn and divorce. Jinn, ain, sihr and divorce. This is the most. Because the most of the families are broken because people think it's jinn. Sometimes it's not the jinn. It's just differences. Anyway, so Allah said specifically in this, He said, وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةٌ فَلَا تَكْفُرْ فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا. This is the verse. مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And nothing will harm you except with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why when you protect yourself, when you take your precautions, when you do the things, then you don't have to worry. Nothing will happen to you, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. There is a continuation of this. How can we prevent the influence of the jinn and the shaitan? I think He answered it. That when you establish a good relationship with Allah, you understand your relationship with Allah as a relationship of obedience and servitude to Allah, ubudiyah. You have to establish a good relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, which is the relationship of obedience, ta'ah. You have to establish your good relationship with this connection in your prayer, in your askar, in tasabih, in your wudu, in your fasting. Yani you have to, these are the things that protect you from all of this that you have to do, whether the jinn or sihr or the eye and so on. And you pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani protect all of us.
They're saying that it's hard to hear when your mouth moves away from the phone.
Oh, okay, inshallah. Sorry. He said that we have to speak in the microphone so that the sisters can hear us. No.
Okay, this question is, she's asking, or whoever is asking, kindly tell me the cure for black magic and jinn possession. I did ruqya and hijama treatment. During treatment, I was getting better, but the symptoms appeared again. Now, so the good news is that it actually worked and it helped. So the ruqya and the hijama, and both of them are treatments for such illnesses, which is sihr and jinn possession. The fact that they worked is good news. And if that you found improvement, this is wonderful, alhamdulillah. But symptoms coming back, it means that you need to continue with that treatment, first of all. So that you are not done yet, you're not cured yet. So that's first. Second of all, consider if you have perhaps returned to some practices that have emboldened and given the jinn power to repossess, re-enter, and reharm you. Because as the Sheikh just said, when you have iman, typically you have iman, you're strong, and they have less power against you. But then, when you are weak in your iman, they'll have more power over you. So consider if there are some practices that you have returned to, some sin, so whatever it is, that have given them again power to harm you. So that's the first thing. And then another thing, inshallah, it means that your treatment is done. Keep on reading, keep on doing your ruqya, maybe do hijama again, until you find that you are clear and safe, alhamdulillah. You want to add anything? That's fine.
This is a little bit, not directly, but I'm saying to you. It says, what is shirk? Is it shirk to claim that one has special powers, good or bad, or preach of his special powers? Now listen to this. Shirk literally is when you take an associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You believe somebody can benefit you, where Allah says no. Even the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, sending peace of the Prophet, initiating your prayer with it, will facilitate your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said it to the dearest people of his. Fatima al-Zahra, his daughter, his uncle Abbas, his aunt Khadija. He told them, Wallahi lan ughni ankum min Allahi shay'a. There are certain things you have to do even to qualify for the shafa'ah, for the help. Abu Jahl is his uncle, but there is uncle in hellfire and uncle in... So that's then number one. So number two, there is also forms of shirk. It's called the shirk al-asghar. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, actually he warned us about shirk. What did he say? He says, اتقوا هذا الشرك. Be aware of shirk. And look at how the description. He said, فإنه أخفى من دبيب النمل على الصخلة الصلداء في الليلة الظلماء. طيب? He said, shirk can creep into you the way a dark black ant can creep on a dark black small stones in a very dark night. You can practically not see it. The Sahaba were puzzled. They said, Ya Rasulullah, if that is secret, قال قولوا, every morning, Allah gave us protection. He said, every morning you wake up, say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min an ushrika bika shay'an a'lamu wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lamu. Literally means, oh Allah, I seek protection and free from you, that I make shirk for I don't know, because listen, or this one. So there is shirk that definitely people who worship cows, who think somebody benefits them, even a sheikh, by the way, even the raqi. The raqi does not benefit you, it's a ruqya that benefits you. You have to be clear about this. So these are two. Now, is it shirk to believe that somebody has special power? No, because powers, it depends. Like if somebody is a good boxer, he's a power. If somebody has good, they have skills. The jinn have powers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them. So to believe that they have special powers is not shirk. But if you think that power is from them and that can influence you, that's where the question mark comes. So it's a very thin line between the two. Right? I give you a question.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Assalamu alaikum. How can someone identify if a person is possessed with jinn or he is sick?
Yeah. Okay, that's the same kind of question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the question here from online is, how does a person differentiate between whether a person is possessed by jinn or is sick? And it's sort of like this question that I have in front of me. How do we differentiate between suffering from major depression, illness, or possession? Which, if it's just depression or it's his possession. Both of these groups stop praying and become quiet, or they make some weird noise and they get ill-tempered at any time. So how do you know the difference between them? In the beginning, especially with this, you're not going to know the difference. You're not going to know the difference. If you're just looking at a person, you're not going to know. If you just heard what Sheikh Abdullah said, you're not going to know the difference. So not until you actually start treatment and then reaction to that treatment, then you will know whether that person is actually suffering from basic depression, which has natural causes, or there's a supernatural cause there. Now, I'm going to say something, inshallah, that if a person is depressed, and I'm going to say if it's not critical, it has not reached a critical point, I don't recommend that you rush and you take antidepressants and you go to a psychologist and whatever. The first course of treatment should be read your Quran, understand your Quran, and make dua and come closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Because surprisingly you will find, as Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِ فَإِنِّي لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. The one who turns away from my remembrance will have difficulty in life, has depressing life. So that's a symptom of what? Symptom of being away from Allah Azza wa Jal. So going back to Allah. And I talked previously about, it's not just simply picking up a mushaf and just reading like that. You need to read with understanding. You need to read seeking a cure from Allah Azza wa Jal. And then whatever you find there, you try to apply. This is what it means to read the Quran. So if you come closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, maybe then that depression is going to go away and you don't need to take any pill. If it reaches a critical stage and you really need help, I would say go and consult a specialist, because you need to save yourself and save a family member from more dire consequences. Now, when you start that treatment, and if you're able to start that treatment on your own, then alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, and maybe you will rescue yourself. But if you find that, this relative of yours is very hesitant, he does not want to read the Quran, does not want to improve, they just want to trap themselves inside a room and never leave, and they're making these noises, then you start treating them, if possible, with the Quran. You read the ruqyah, or take them to a person who can read the ruqyah. And then the consequences will tell you. As the Shaykh said, if you find that the jinn is appearing, then this is a sign, the person is possessed, or there is magic, there's something supernatural about it. Or they may just get better just because they are listening to the Quran. But if after treatment and nothing is improving and he's still stuck, she's still stuck in that same place, it's time for you to consult a specialist who can inshallah treat them in some other way to complement whatever we are doing Islamically.
I'll give you this one, inshallah.
You want to add something?
Oh, okay.
You want to add something? Add, inshallah. Mm-hmm.
But I do believe the Quran and religion, Islamic therapy, is very, very effective as a preemptive measure. And I think that needs to be emphasized a lot. I feel the more you adopt the Islamic way of looking at life, a sabr and shukr and that stoic way of looking at life, you will be very resilient to death. And that is, so people don't need to dismiss it entirely, but it feels a preemptive measure, it's very effective. But once people are depressed and they're in that state of mind, and who knows?
It's difficult.
Look at the time of the Sahaba, and they compare it with modern day times where they say that 50 years ago people did feel depressed. Well, that's because we don't You know, but it is increasing. It could be because we're isolated because of all the technology.
Right,
I'm
right.
sure the sisters can't hear what he's saying.
I hear repeated.
It's very important to, I feel, help the Muslim community understand the importance of this.
It might be worthwhile whenever he speaks to have him come up here and speak into this mic, because there's no way he can replicate what he's saying.
Right,
The
right,
sisters need
right.
to be respected.
ممكن to brief because this is not listening.
So the brother is adding something, inshallah, important. He's saying that, you know, being close to Allah Azza wa Jal, close to the Quran, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal is a good preemptive measure for a person to be safe from depression. So he's saying you'll be very resilient against it, and inshallah it's not going to touch you or not going to touch you as often. You'll be able to bounce back from it easily. But when you are actually depressed and being trapped by negative thoughts, he's saying that just reading the Quran on your own may not be enough, because you'll read it and you'll read it through a negative lens. So you'll need to talk to someone, and it's not necessarily a therapist, but you can talk to your imam. And I agree, because sometimes when you're reading the Quran and you lack the lenses that will enable you to understand what Allah is saying there. If you understand, and that's what I'm saying, that if you understand what Allah is saying there, reading the Quran will rescue you. If you understand, it will rescue you. I have no doubt about it. The problem is that sometimes either we don't understand, or as he said, you're trapped. You need somebody to intervene and say, no, see what this ayah is saying, see how this ayah applies to you, and that can help you. So you need an interpreter of the Quran. So if you yourself are not like that,
What's the meaning of trap?
trapped in your thoughts. Trapped in your thoughts. I mean that
Reading and reciting Quran?
even though you're reciting the Quran, the way that you're looking at it is that when you read something about hellfire, let's say I'm in hellfire, there's no good in me, I'm helpless, I'm sinful, da. So it's just you sink deeper and deeper. It's possible. You need somebody to come and say, no, focus on the other ayat, focus on the rahmah of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is in the Quran. So you need the balance. And that balance sometimes you can see, you can provide it for yourself if you have enough knowledge and background, and sometimes you need somebody's intervention to come and rescue you from it. So, you agree? Khair, inshallah. Barakallah fiqh. One more question, Facebook. No.
What is the best ruqya?
Okay. لا تفضل. طيب. What is the best ruqya? Ruqya is dua. Ruqya is asking Allah Azza wa Jal to help. So what is the best ruqya? The best ruqya is something that comes from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. The best ruqya is something that comes from the authentic sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the best ruqya. There is dua from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? If you are sick, if you are afflicted, if you are in pain, that is a good ruqya. Ayat from the Quran. So, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ is ruqya. Al-Fatiha is ruqya. Ayatul Kursi is ruqya. The Quran in general is ruqya. But these are in specific, are effective ruqya. So you can read them. And there are some books, alhamdulillah, that have been collected. Yeah, there are some books, inshallah, that have been collected. I have 2 extra copies of Hisnul Muslim with me. So if someone does not have that, inshallah, you can get it from me. So there are specific books that have been compiled that have ruqya in them already for you. So you can just take these books, just make sure that it's all from the Quran or authentic sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the best thing that you can read or be read for you and on you.
Sorry. These are three questions. Actually, somehow they are related. The first one is, how can we remove jinn from our house? Actually, the second one says, how do we protect ourselves from the jinn in the house, or how we get rid of him? And then there is another attachment for it. This one says, can we leave the dishes in the same sink overnight? Will the jinn, what they call it, taste from them? Or should we, what is this one? Keep water, like cover water glass and so on. They're related in a way. Now, there are a number of things you can do in the house that remove the jinn. You know what the first one is? Actually to call the azan in the house.
Yeah.
You know, right now in our house, when I'm fasting or something, I go home, I call the azan, and my grandchildren now learn to have to call the azan, because the azan, as the Prophet said, would drive the jinn away from you. That's A. B, to pray in the house. I always say to the ikhwan, families, please, if you are praying, pray with your children. Pray. Even if you're not coming to the masjid, establish jama'ah prayer in your household. Sometimes you go to a house and see the sister praying by herself, the father, pray together, because that will keep the shaitan away from you and give you really that. But more important than that is what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said it categorically. البيت الذي تقرأ فيه سورة البقرة, the house where you recite Surah Al-Baqarah, the shaitan will not, the jinn will not have a place to stay there. And this, some people طبعا now recently ask, oh, can we put the tape, can we put the CDs? I say I don't know, but if you sit down and read Al-Baqarah, and they say you read it with one breath, all of it. And there are these young kuffaz, mashallah, we have it. يعني back home, and I told many people who called me that ask one of these huffaz to come home, drive them home, give them $25 for their trip back and forth. Let them come and sit down and read the Quran in your household. They have beautiful voices. The Prophet said categorically, if you read the Quran in the house, the Surah Al-Baqarah is not a place for the jinn to stay there. Now, the Prophet did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, advise us to cover things. He said when you have like what you call a bar of things, but not empty things. Empty things, you can wash them back. But if there is food, don't leave it open. If you are a person who is drinking water at night, make sure it's covered, because you never know. Yeah, and these are the things that the Prophet ﷺ advised us to do. And if we do them, then we, on the one hand, we fulfill what the Prophet ﷺ advised us, and two, these are things that will remove the jinn from us or will protect you from all of this, inshallah. Right? So these are the three questions actually. The second part of this says, how do you know that someone has done magic in a person or a case? We don't. By the way, people who come to me here, and they say, oh, a sheikh told them this person did magic. Ikhwana, the Prophet didn't do that. He asked people, did you suspect somebody? Right? And when they suspected the person, then he called the person. But nobody, we don't know the ghaib, we don't know it. Some people say, oh, we know this person did jadoo for you, go for this person. Nobody knows. You can suspect a person, just like what the Prophet did. But nobody will know. If we know, khalas. Well, if we know, just take them, maybe prison them or do whatever you want to do. You don't. You protect yourself from their doing rather than from themselves. And sometimes you might be wrong in accusing a person doing ayn. You suspect. That's why the Prophet used the word do you suspect somebody? When they said, he called the person. He said, when you see something good in this person, when you say Tabarakallah, Barriku, and you say Tabarakallah. By the way, especially the ayn, I told you, the evil eye does not come from a bad person. It could be from you, the mother, the father, the kid. The Prophet said, when you see something exciting, don't go like that. That can strike the person with the evil eye. First thing you say, Tabarakallah. He said, Barriku, say Tabarakallah. Tabarakallah, shield your eye from striking a person for you, inshallah. I'm just looking at the watch because this is a time for Asr prayer. Actually, this is a time for the Azan, right? We have 5 minutes. So what I'm going to suggest to you, we are going to break, inshallah, for Asr, pray Asr, and then we can come and continue until 5 o'clock. Right? Jazakumullah khair. Huh? Sorry? We'll come to that. We have lots of questions here, so definitely there are so many things about Malak magic here. Complete. He said Surah Al-Baqarah. He said Al-Bayt alladhi tuqra fihi Surah Al-Baqarah. And the scholar said you sit down and read Surah Al-Baqarah from A to Z.
Yeah. There's one sister. There's a sister there.
Oh, sorry. Naam, sister. Yeah. طيب, we'll come to that. Actually, there is a minimum you can read. Fawatih al-Baqarah, the first 5 verses, Ayat al-Kursi, and the last 2 verses of Surah al-Baqarah. This is for your daily. Somebody, by the way, sent the question because I can answer this now. This is what's it. Do you have to have a wazifa? Our scholars, they call this wazifa. Wazifa means you have a special amount of reading, minimum that you have to read. This was called the wazifa. Certain awrah, certain dua, certain data. You don't have to, but it's good for you to have it. يعني when you have to, it's a must. No, you can have your own and wazaif differ. You go from one sheikh to another, from country to country. They taught us even at different times in our life. They say this is the wazifa for the babies, this is the wazifa for the children, and so on. Right? Jazakumullah khair. We'll be back, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah.
That's why I said we should break, inshallah.
Trying to give the ladies